Greenskins vs Dwarfs, the classic Warhammer matchup, a tale of big, green, sadistic mushrooms, and short, angry people who like shiny things. I am playing as the Orcs and Goblins of the Bloody Handz Tribe, and I forgot my spider mount for my Goblin Big Boss, which was quite upsetting. I was wondering why he was so slow during the game. When I went back to the replay, I was like, yep, that'll do it, I forgot the spider. Nasty Skulkerz poison attacks and armor piercing up front will be my front line, and meat shields, big guns in the next row, and black orcs in the back. Also have an Orc Shaman with AoE Go and Fists of Gork to buff up my attack values. And over on this flank, I have Orc Boar Big Guns and a Goblin Big Boss, who I did not forget the spider mount for, which was good. It'll give him poison attacks and a bunch of mobility. And then for the Dwarf line, we have a pretty interesting setup here. So he's got 4 sets of gyros, 2 with brimstone guns and 2 with steam guns. They're going to be incredibly annoying this battle. Gyros are a great choice versus the Greenskins in large numbers because they can only field one flyer. You can only ever bring a wyvern with the Greenskins, and you're typically not going to bring enough skirmishers to actually deal with 4 sets of gyros. Like, you'll sometimes see a Rusty Arrow or one of those Regiment of Renown arrow units, but you typically aren't going to bring like 3 or 4 or 5 skirmishers with the Greenskins that can actually do significant damage to the gyros. So he's going to kind of have free reign of the skies to pick apart my line as I move into melee. And you'll see those nasty Skulkerz will take some nasty shots from the gyros with steam guns. But over on this side, we have the Dwarfs in a nice little hexagon, or octagon, or I don't know what shape that was. But we've got the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers with the increased health pool and numbers in a unit. We've got Miners, we've got Dwarf Warriors, we've got the Grumbling Guard. They have the Area of Effect Stamina buff, and he also has a Runelord and 2 Runesmiths, which is going to be incredibly annoying to face off against, not just because the Runes of Negation and Oath and Steel, which will dramatically reduce incoming damage, but he'll also be able to constantly cycle through the Runes of Wrath and Ruin, which will do serious damage to whichever units he targets and wear down my army over time. So I have to strike hard, I have to strike fast with all my armor-piercing units, and hopefully be able to deal with those Runesmiths very early on with my Night Goblin Warboss and my Goblin Big Bosses, which they are well suited to dealing with, but I have to break through the box and get at them first, which is not the easiest thing to do. Now I do have my Boar Big Guns getting ready to charge in, and I also have 3 Squig Herd who are in the back that I had Vanguard deployed, getting ready to charge in as well. So I'm going to try to break through the squishy targets here, the Miners first, break through them, and then if I can get a bunch of Black Orcs or Big Guns into the center of this hexagon or whatever shape it is, then we can maybe deal with the soft squishy stuff in the center and maybe kill those Runesmiths with like Goblin Big Bosses. Here come the Squig Herd. They have armor piercing and bonus versus infantry and a nice charge bonus. One thing I am going to do here that's kind of a mistake, I'm not going to cycle charge too much because I didn't want, when I was playing, I didn't want them to pull out and then rout because they do have crappy leadership, but they can't rout if they're in melee combat because if Squigs go wild. But cycle charging is probably the better thing here, and I'm actually going to just keep them in melee. And I've gotten a little bit blobbed up on this side, which is going to allow his gyros to start bombing me and do quite a bit of damage from the top, and they're going to actually start racking up quite a bunch of kills. But I've also cycled my Goblin Big Boss and my Night Goblin Warboss over to one side where those Miners were, where the Boar Boys charged in, and I'm trying to break through there and get all 3 of those heroes to start smacking on the Runesmith. If I can take them down quickly, that's going to be a big deal for me because each time they cast those armor buffs or those damage negation buffs, it makes it that much harder for me to cut through their army. So you got to deal with those Runesmiths and the Runelord early on, or you're going to have serious trouble cutting through all these really heavily armored units for the Dwarfs. Now I have broken through. You can see some of my nasty Skulkerz and my Black Orcs have broken through and kind of collapsing in on the center of his formation. And you can also see my Night Goblin Warboss smacking on the Runesmith there. Night Goblin Warboss rides a giant cave squig. He has 400 weapon strength, he has armor piercing, and he has bonus versus infantry. I think he's one of the most cost-effective lord choices in the game currently. Good mobility, and he can dish out a lot of damage. Kind of crappy leadership, but he definitely does work. And so he and the big bosses will be focusing down that Runesmith. You can see he's already routed, and I'm going to be able to bring him down. So the one Runesmith is already down, and I've already broken up the octagon, this formation here. You've kind of seen it break apart, and I am now going to be able to start collapsing in on the Runelord. Now, while my Big Boss and my Night Goblin Warboss are together, focusing down his heroes, I'm in really good shape because the Runelord and the Runesmith simply cannot deal with those two big bosses and my combat lords in general. They just can't do it. They're more for buffing up their line than they are for individual melee combat. So while I'm operating in that 3 hero and lord group together, the quintessential goon squad, basically, I should be able to do really well. You can see I'm racking up a bunch of damage on this Runelord right now. 3 heroes smacking on him. That's going very well for me, and I am collapsing the formation, and things are going very well. Balance bar shifting in my favor here. And with There We Go and Fist of Gork going off on my line, and all this armor-piercing damage definitely starting to cut through Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, starting to cut through the Miners, and the Dwarf Warriors are beginning to break, so things are going relatively well. Now, of course, the Ironbreakers are going to hold out for a very long time. They're doing a very good job, but my Orc Shaman is safe. I have taken some serious damage from his Gyros, but things are going well. I'm going to be able to chase off his Runelord very soon, and the Squigs are still in melee combat. So all in all, I'm feeling pretty confident at this point. Maybe a little bit too confident, because here's the thing. When you see that balance bar shifting ever more in your favor, it gets really, really easy to take your foot off the gas and let up. But in a game where units can rout at the drop of a hat, and heroes like the Runesmith can continuously pump out that DPS over time, every time Wrath and Ruin is off cooldown and keep their bros in the fight for a very long time, things can get really dangerous, especially against the Dwarfs. And this is how the Dwarfs win. They end up outlasting you with the buffs from the Runesmiths and the Runelord, and just wearing you down with the Rune of Wrath and Ruin over time. So at this point, I've completely forgotten about the Runesmith. In fact, I don't think I'd even seen him at this point. There were a bunch of unit flags there, and in the scrum, I just missed the fact that there was a second Runesmith. So I don't have my big bosses or my war boss really punching him in the face at the moment. I've successfully chased off his Runelord, but he will be able to come back, and once those runes start stacking together, it's going to be like punching a brick wall with your bare hands. Very little damage will get done when their damage negation is stacked up to 66%. What I should be doing is having all my heroes and my lord together in that trifecta of ass-kicking, because nothing on the field right now can stand up to that kind of DPS when they're together. But I've gotten overconfident and sent my lord out by himself to try to chase down the Runelord. He did get tied down by some Gyrocopters for a bit, and I should be able to murder them, but the Gyrocopters are tying down a bunch of my melee units as well, and they're just kind of being really annoying at this point. So I was trying to send my Night Goblin Warboss to 1v1 the Runelord just because it would look awesome, be a cinematic ending, and I was like, yeah, that's gonna be sweet. And frankly, I didn't think that my opponent could stop me at this point, and maybe he can't. I mean, look at how far this balance bar is in my favor. Like, things are going really well right now, but I don't have my big bosses in that big block, and that's actually allowed one of my Goblin big bosses to rout as well. Now I am going to get my armor-piercing and anti-infantry lord into combat, but the Runelord is on a mount, so I think what he's on actually makes him large. I'm not 100% sure about that. Someone could correct me, but he doesn't count as infantry, I don't think. If he was fighting a Runesmith, that's a different story. That is definitely infantry. But when you're mounted up on an Anvil of Doom, I think that counts as large, so the anti-infantry bonus won't help over there. And of course, with this 44% damage negation, I'm not really going to be able to do too much damage to him when I'm by myself. So he's going to pull out, and again, I'm going to get tied down by some Gyrocopters. Not a big deal. I mean, it's just Dwarf Warriors and Gyrocopters over here. My Lord should be able to kill them relatively easily. You just saw him take another one down. Big explosion. I love when you take down the Gyrocopters in melee. It's always really satisfying. It's more satisfying when they're up in the air, of course. You can just bring them down and watch them slam into the ground. But here come my big guns. They're back from routing to charge into the back. And I still have my big boss on the spider in melee. Still have my potion on at least one of my big bosses, I believe. Still have my Orc Shaman alive, and he should be able to cast at least one or two more AoE goes or Foot of Gork. So, again, things not looking too bad. Balance bar 3/4 in my favor. There's no way I could possibly lose this game, right? My Lord is taking some damage, and things are starting to get a little bit scary. Like, the balance bar just seems completely out of whack, right? Like, it says, you're definitely winning this game, but my Goblin Big Boss is definitely about to rout out of his potion now. A lot of wavering on my line, and I still have not finished off his Runelord, which my opponent has done a really good job of keeping alive since he came back from routing. His Runesmith is still alive as well, and if I don't get my Big Bosses back, I'm going to have a seriously hard time killing those Lord and Hero characters for the Dwarfs. So here we go, he's going to get cast one more time, and we're going to get a big scrum here in melee combat. But there is way more wavering on my line than on theirs. And I don't have my Lord. There he is, finally into combat, so I am giving the morale buff now. But a bunch of my stuff just routed, and balance bar is starting to shift back. And my Lord is isolated at this point. I only have my Lord and the Orc Shaman left. Now, things will start cycling back in, but the problem is, with the Greenskins, and with any faction in general, if your guys keep routing over and over again, there's going to come a point where they just shatter. And so you can see wavering, yeah, they might be able to get back into melee, but there's no guarantee that they're not going to just rout before they even get back into combat because they're worn out. So things are getting really scary at this point. Orc Shaman is in melee, but this is not, of course, where you really want him to be. This is not where he excels. He's not a combat lord, he's a caster. And my Lord just routed as well. And what looked like a sure victory is suddenly starting to look very, very dire for the Orcs of the Bloody Hand. Big Boss coming back now, but getting tied down by the Gyrocopters and the really good leadership of the Dwarfs. And the fact that he kept his Runelord and his Runesmith alive is going to end up being my doom, I think, here, which was really, really frustrating, but I had no one to blame but myself, because I really just kind of screwed up that ending there. Orc Shaman is going to get knocked down, but he's going to rout real soon. And that's basically going to be your game. So, all I had to do was keep my big bosses and my Night Goblin Warboss together and just kill the Runesmith. Now, I didn't see the Runesmith right away, but that wasn't the biggest deal. I just had to kill the Runelord. If the Runelord died there, this battle's over. 22% damage negation was not going to be enough. But the fact that he was able to stack it up with the 44% damage negation, even though the Runelord only had like 300 HP left, meant that I just could not kill him in time. And it ended up being too much for my Greenskins to handle. They got worn down and ultimately shattered. So, gotta keep those guys together. They operate really well at killing enemy lords when they're working together. But I tried to get a little bit too flashy at the end there, and I ended up losing a battle that I definitely should have won because I had surrounded. I think I had outplayed my opponent. I just got cocky at the end and screwed up, and that was 100% my bad. It did make for a really awesome replay, and it was really cool there at the end to see him pull it out because I didn't expect it. I don't think he expected it either, so very well played to him. But yeah, it's like the old saying goes, play to the whistle, and I definitely didn't do it that battle, so let it be a little bit of a warning or PSA for you guys. Make sure you play to the end of the game. See you guys later.